Hi, I'm Veronica, and welcome to my channel, and specifically to this series that is centering around the nervous system regulation. So, in the kind of introduction to that whole series, I explained how you might sometimes need some little bit of a boost to move through the stage of stuckness of your nervous system. So sometimes you might be more stuck in that fight or flight response, this kind of hyper-vigilance and hyperactivity state. And sometimes you might be stuck in a freeze mode where you're more lacking any energy and you're kind of cut off and numb. And today I would like to touch upon the importance of stillness as a deeply restoring and healing practice. But there is a big but there. For a lot of people, stillness doesn't feel like a good or restful or pleasant place. So if you are in that fight and flight mode, stillness is not going to feel good for you because you are always on the go. That's what makes you feel safe, that you can quickly move away from the danger or confront the danger. And when you are still, you are kind of depriving yourself from that option. You're more vulnerable. While if you're in a freeze state, the stillness is your default. But that default that is, in this case, the stillness is that petrified state, like you're still but very stiff, very rigid, and waiting for the worst to come. You're kind of frozen. So there are some ways that you can move into stillness as a way of accessing the parasympathetic mode of the nervous system, of that rest and restore mode. Mm, so in this case, you want to eventually invite yourself to get in a state where you can be in stillness and it feels safe and comfortable enough for your body to really let go of all those protections, all those tensions that you carry as a protective measure. So if you haven't done that yet, please don't forget to subscribe and to hit the notification button so that you can follow that entire series. And today's practice is done lying down. And please remember that whatever I'm going to suggest is a suggestion only. If you need to break, take a break, stand up, stop in the middle, that's always an option. So before we begin, it's important for you to work it out whether you're starting from the freeze state or from fight and flight. And it's quite easy to work it out because fight and flight is a very agitated state, while the freeze is this numb, dissociated, very kind of low in energy state. So there is no way that you can confuse the two. If you are starting from the freeze, most likely, before you can even access the stillness, just because those two states are so similar to each other, it's good to move through the stage of activation, of moving more. And I have a few videos that suggest what that could be, how it could look like. to move, to shake, to do something a little bit more active before you move back to stillness. If you're starting from that agitated place, you definitely don't want to agitate yourself even more with more movement. You're going straight into the stillness. And it's important that this is going to be a comfortable stillness from the physical point of view, because that will then make it much easier for you to start releasing any tension. That's why you might need some props. It's nice to lie over a thick blanket so that you don't feel cold. Coldness always creates this tension in the body. Make sure that you have warm clothes on, that the temperature in the room is also warm. And get some blankets and some props that you might need to use underneath your thighs and underneath your head so that it's fully comfortable for you to be lying down on the ground. Set yourself up, make sure that whatever is underneath you feels soft and warm, and have some props nearby so that you know that you would be able to use them to support your head or your legs. And it's rarely a good idea to come straight into stillness and become like really kind of frozen into that stillness without easing yourself to that through the movement first. So when you're going to make your way down to the ground, I would invite you first to move a little bit before you become still. And it's not a big movement, but it's just something that will tell your body that, okay, now we're changing the position, we're changing the relation to the gravity. There is all that ground underneath that gives a lot of support, and that changes everything in terms of what is necessary muscle tonus, because you're fully supported. So there's nothing really that needs to be engaged to keep you here. And it might require a little bit of time for you to settle into, okay, this actually can be comfortable for me. So some little movements with your torso, with your pelvis, maybe with your head. That feel a bit massagey. It's really subtle, but it's more, adjusting yourself to, oh yeah, this is becoming a little bit more comfortable already. Now, things for you to watch out in terms of how your body feels lying flat on the ground will be definitely if you have that feeling that your chin is pointing up and there is a lot of tension at the back of the neck and that really big gap between the neck and the floor, then you know that this is not going to be a comfortable position for you. So that's when you need support under the back of the head, so that you can feel that your neck, that your cervical spine is more neutral. And you know that because then you start looking straight at the ceiling and not somewhere behind you, over the head. Make sure that you're not going for a very big cushion, because you're doing exactly the opposite, right? Then your gaze is somewhere at your legs rather than at the ceiling. And again, there is a lot of tension for the neck. So just enough to keep that neck long. And depending on how is your body, you might need it or you might not need it. Personally, I don't need it. And another thing that you will need, if you want to have, most likely you will need when you want to have your legs long, is at the very moment you straighten your legs, there's that bigger curve happening in your lower back, and it feels a little bit like not 100% comfortable for your lower back. as opposed to when you have your knees bent and your lower back comes closer to the ground. So that's when you decide how much of support you need underneath your thighs. Not the knees, as you might often hear in yoga classes, underneath your thighs. And maybe just a little bit is enough, like some small folded blanket, or you might need something slightly bigger, like a little cushion under each thigh. And that's when it's you know that you that it's the right place for you when you feel like the entire weight of your thigh sinks into that support, and there's that immediate sense of, oh yeah, now my lower back is so much more comfortable. It might even feel that it's closer to the ground. So that's what you're looking for. Now, this in itself, this kind of position is very open and very exposed. So again, for a lot of people, that will not feel comfortable, even if various parts of the body might in theory be comfortable. Altogether, it's not going to feel comfortable, and that is because um, psychologically it doesn't feel safe. It's too exposed, all your internal organs. And that's when I would definitely suggest you to cover yourself with another blanket, with a thick blanket, or place something, ideally even something a little bit heavier, over your belly or over your pelvis. And that feels more grounding, more soothing. It feels more, it usually feels more calming and allows you to settle a little bit more. So this is another thing that you can play with, that you can check if it's gonna work for you. And sometimes you might have your hands over your body as well, but we'll be doing some things with the arms in this particular practice. That's why I would suggest rather to place something over you rather than different than your hands. Okay, and after you've done all of these adjustments and you can decide that, yeah, this is definitely the most comfortable place for me to land, and that includes where exactly my legs want to be. Is it feeling more comfortable when they're wider apart or closer? Where my arms want to land? Where I don't feel that I actually have to hold them in this position, but they can rest with all their weight on the ground. So this is what you're looking for. And we're not going to start with a complete stillness because that often does not work, but instead I'll give you a little task of micro movements which might help you to settle into that stillness gradually. As for the eyes, open or closed, if it feels nice and soothing, close your eyes. But you can also look at the ceiling and have your eyes open. It doesn't matter here. And we're going to start with some little movements first to give the brain that difference between moving, not moving, turning on, turning off. So you might start with something like wiggling the toes in your left foot. So that automatically brings your awareness to that place, to that one place in the body. A little bit of a wiggle. And when you move, it's easier to feel a part of the body. But later we will be trying to dive into the sensations even without moving. So it's easier to begin with to move and feel how the body moves. And then you can release it. And then you can very purposefully tense all the muscles in the entire leg and press it into the ground. So see if it's possible for you at all to do it only in that left leg. So the right one is just lying as it was, and the left leg, the whole left leg, so your calf and the back of the knee and the thigh and maybe the left buttock as well, they press into the ground. And there's an effort, but it's not an effort that would tense up the rest of the body. So it's not 100% effort. It's like a 20% effort maybe. And then you release that, so that your brain and your nervous system can really register the difference between how it is when there is an effort and tension and contraction, and the moment when that is gone. There are two ways you can always do the same thing. So one would be to press into the ground. The other one would be to imagine that your leg is super heavy. It weighs hundreds of kilograms, and you're trying very hard to lift it above the ground, but you cannot because it's so heavy. So there's a lot of effort coming into that lifting that never happens, and then you let go of that effort. So check for yourself which one of these two methods works better for you, because it might be that one is more effective than the other, and then you can stick to it as you go through the body. So this was your left leg, and you might already start feeling a little bit of a difference if you dive with your awareness and with your felt sense into the sensations in the right leg and into the left leg, that the one that went through that very simple process of engaging and releasing feels slightly different. How it's resting on the ground, its contact with the ground, and how it feels inside out, a little bit different than the right one. You can even name it for yourself. How is it different? Is it feeling heavier or softer or bigger or longer? Whatever it is for you, take your time to name it for yourself. And then exactly the same with the other leg. So you might start with a little wiggle in the toes of the right foot, just the toes, and notice how that movement transfers through the whole foot. So it's the toes moving, but you might feel some sensations at the front of the foot or in the sole of the foot, or maybe a little bit in the, and maybe even traveling higher up the leg. So what you can sense in the body right now. And then you can release that and engage the entire right leg by pressing it into the ground. So you're pressing your heel, your calf, your thigh, and your buttock all to the ground. And that's, if you touch that leg, you might even try it, that leg will be feeling firm and active, as opposed to the other one, which feels soft. And then you can release it. So the moment you release it, that state, that texture of the tissue is changing. If you prefer the one that you imagine you're lifting something off the ground, but it's so heavy that you cannot actually lift it, you could try that one instead, whichever works. And again, that little moment for you to check it out. If at any point you start feeling this position is not comfortable for you, you need tiny adjustments. Don't think that you have to stay in that stillness exactly as it is. This is a stillness that has to be comfortable, and it should not feel rigid or enforced. So you're in a full charge of, okay, yes, I just need a tiny bit of a wiggle here, or move it a few centimeters here and there. You can do it at any time. You need more support, you realize suddenly you need more support, you get more support. So don't think that you need to have that stillness as something enforced by me. It's entirely, you're in charge. You might try do something like pressing your sacrum, that triangle bone, or in the lower back into the ground for a moment. So you're pressing it in and releasing. You might even check how it would be to wiggle that pelvis right and left. And maybe for a moment you can have, if you have like a pillow over the belly, keep the pillow there. If you didn't have anything over your belly, you can keep your hands there for a moment. And pay attention to the breath and what it does, and whether there's any movement at all in the belly. And perhaps you feel that there is a difference in that softness or the positioning of your belly the moment you breathe in, and that moment you breathe out, or maybe even that little pause after you breathe out. So the exhalation, the breathing out, is a moment where you can soften a little bit more. The exhalation is aiding you in that process of releasing. So again, if you want to give yourself a little task so that your brain is engaged with something, it's busy with something, and you're not in complete stillness, you can breathe into the belly so that it expands a little bit more. You cannot breathe into the belly because obviously you breathe into your lungs, but you breathe in such a way that you feel your belly expanding when you inhale, and that everything softens a little bit and drops a little bit when you exhale. And it might be very subtle. Don't expect big changes here. You're fine tuning your attention to catch those subtle changes as well. And then you can go a little bit higher up and maybe try bringing your shoulder blades together. So as if you wanted to make the shoulder blades touch the spine. And so there is that moment of, again, contraction. You might feel that your entire upper body is lifting off the ground when that happens. And again, this is an active part, this is an engagement. And then you can soften it and let those shoulder blades sink into the ground. And we're going to move into one of the arms. So you might do something like wiggle the fingers in your hands. Some really small movement there. And as you wiggle them, again, notice what you feel, not just in the fingers maybe, but also in the palm, or maybe back of the hand, or maybe it travels all the way to the forearm. How high up you might feel some that movement traveling up the body. And then you might hold the hand wherever it is, and maybe notice how it's resting, how much of its weight is resting on the ground, which parts of the hand are touching and which aren't. And maybe you feel a little bit of a sensation in the palm, which is quite, or in the fingertips, which are quite receptive. They have lots of nerve endings. So there is a possibility, a higher possibility, you're going to tune into those sensations a bit easier than in other parts of the body. Some tingling, some maybe a little bit of a change of temperature. Sometimes it might feel like maybe pulsation, whatever you might sense in your palm. And again, we're going to do a little bit of an active movement. So if you could press that left hand, arm, and shoulder, maybe together with the shoulder blade into the ground, and maybe everything else tenses up, and see if it can be small enough so that you can keep only that left arm engaged, but whatever before was released, it can stay released. And then you can let go of it. And if that helps, the movement is we wanted to lift the arm, but the arm was super heavy and you're trying to lift it, and then you release it. And then again, you can give yourself a moment to compare how that left arm and the right arm feels different. If it's still comfortable in the rest of the body, if you need to make any micro adjustments to remain comfortable here. And then you can try the same on the other arm, a tiny bit of a movement with the fingers, tuning into how your hand rests on the ground, which parts of the hand are touching. So which part of the hand or palm touches the ground, how that weight is resting. Is there any way it can rest a little bit more? Maybe some sensations in the palm of the hand, anything at all. And it's all really subtle. Don't search for big things, big sensations, big movements. You can try that pushing into the ground with the arm, and you might feel that, oh, the other parts of the body, they have the tendency to join in. And you're telling them now, okay, yeah, let's just try how it would be for only that right arm to do the job. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. There will be other parts of the body turning on. That's fine. If they want to turn on, don't don't think that you need to prevent it necessarily. And then you can release it for a moment and notice that moment of a difference. So the important part is that you pay attention to the difference. Even if it's a little difference, it's the difference that matters between the two. Whether you're trying to lift that heavy arm or pressing it into the ground, how it is when you do it and when you stop doing it. How those arms, shoulders rest on the ground. And maybe you decide like, that's actually not the best angle for them. There's some other position where they're more restful. So remember, you can always make that adjustment. And then there is movement of the head. So head is it's an interesting one. So you might have a lot of habits of holding it very protectively, because this is your headquarters, right? This is the most important part of you, and we often live in our heads, like the heads are all that matters, and we're a bit detached and this from the body. So what I would suggest is to allow that heavy head to roll very slowly, however far it wants to roll, with as little muscular engagement as possible. So let it roll heavily, and as it rolls in that super slow motion, pay attention to how various parts of the skull are resting on the ground and how heavy they can feel. And as that head rolls wherever it wanted to roll, it might be just a tiny bit of a movement, it might feel like a little bit bigger, and you're definitely gonna feel that your nose is now pointing somewhere else than before. Then you can reverse it again, letting that head roll back. And often it rolls back to a different spot than when you started, because it rolls where it naturally wants to land rather than where you place it. And maybe even now that one half of the skull feels different than the other half. And you can do the same with the other side. So roll your head super slowly, bit by bit, bit by bit, letting it roll wherever it wants to roll. So it's like a heavy ball that is rolling on its own and stopping where it wants to stop. So you're not pushing anything at all. And then focus stays on those points of contact, how heavy that skull can feel on the ground. And then you let it land wherever it wants to land. I definitely felt that it landed somewhere else than when it was in the beginning. And you might also check for your face and jaw. So it could be something like scrunching the face muscles for a moment, tensing them all up, and then allowing them to smooth and land. You might just for a moment close the mouth and clench the teeth, and then notice how it is when the teeth are apart. You might even try to tense up your tongue, maybe press it against the roof of the mouth, and then let it soften and drop towards the floor of the mouth. And this is when you're focusing for a moment on the breathing and that quality of the breath expanding your entire body, creating a little bit more of space. It's kind of effort part of the whole breathing process, and then that slow exhalation when you're inviting your body to soften and to drop a little bit more. So every time you might imagine that you are sinking a little bit deeper into soft sand or into fresh grass or wherever you're gonna feel most safe and comfortable, or in a soft bed, whatever it is for you, whatever feels the most comforting kind of visualization. And sometimes it's nice to make this exhalation a little bit exaggerated. So you might take a bigger inhale, just so that that exhalation can be longer and louder, like a sigh. So you might try it a couple of times and notice what that does to you. And if it was long time back that you decided this is not comfortable and you need to make bigger or smaller movements or shift your position, you know that you can always do that. So it was long time back that you decided this is just driving you crazy. It's making you anxious or irritated rather than calm. Go with whatever you need and take those little moments of, oh yeah, this was actually, for a moment, I could feel that difference between when everything was active and tense and when I allowed it to sink, when I allowed myself to be held by the ground underneath. So that might have been way longer than you've ever done. Or it's just slowly starting to feel comfortable. So everybody is different. If you felt that this is, whoa, way too much, and now you really need to move and do something really active, you can stretch, yawn, roll around. And if you're feeling that this is the moment when you're only starting to melt and starting to feel that comfort, and you feel that, okay, I definitely need more time, but it's slowly happening. It's changing breath to breath. Pause the video and stay with it. for as long as it feels comfortable. So this is the main point here. You stay with it only for as long as it truly feels comfortable. And you're accepting the fact that in the beginning it's not going to be a long time and that you would need to break it up. And there will be little moments of release, but a lot of thoughts coming, thoughts telling you that now it's time to move, now it's time to do something, reminding you about this or other task. This is your your very, very ingrained habits that are not gonna let go so easily, and that's all right. They're all they're they are there for a reason. They were there to help you uh, to survive, to be in a difficult environment before. So you created those protective patterns for a reason. But now is the time you can slowly invite to entangle them, bit by bit, in small doses. If that was a long enough dose for you today, you can start making little movements and bigger movements. And again, invite the movement that feels soft and gentle and really pleasant. So maybe you want to give yourself a little hug, touch your body, and then introduce a little bit of movement, rocking, whatever your body needs. And make sure that you're not jumping straight into activity after that. That you take a moment to notice actually what all of that did to you. So you might want to stay for some time, lying on the side. And only after a good few breaths here, very gradually move into a seated position. And just notice how it is, how it feels after giving yourself that time to approach the restful stillness. So I hope that this was a very useful practice for you. And I do understand that it might be challenging and it can take time for you to start really enjoying it. But it's really important that you slowly start introducing these periods of stillness and search for those small pockets of comfort. As with time, they will expand and your interpretation of stillness will change completely. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me and I will answer them below. So if you like this video, click a like and subscribe. And if you would like a more specific advice regarding and something that you can always have with you, this kind of first aid for any moment you are in a physical discomfort or you're experiencing anxiety, head to my website www.withmeta.eu. There are 7 minutes long first aid audios for both of these scenarios. You can download them and always have them with you. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.